On a lonely highway during a heavy rainstorm, Marion Temple, a 29-year-old mechanic who owns a struggling roadside repair workshop, is driving home after finishing an emergency repair for a customer. Traffic suddenly comes to a standstill. Ahead, a luxury SUV has been forced off the road by a speeding fuel tanker that loses control while trying to avoid another vehicle. The SUV crashes through the guardrail and begins leaking fuel. Most motorists keep their distance, afraid the vehicle could explode. Without thinking twice, Marion grabs the fire extinguisher from his pickup truck, smashes the driver's window, and pulls the unconscious woman inside to safety just seconds before the SUV bursts into flames. The woman he rescues is Sophia Bennett, the mysterious billionaire founder and CEO of Bennett Technologies, one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies. Marion has no idea who she is. To him, she's simply someone whose life needed saving. The rescue is captured by a passing motorist, but Marion quietly leaves before reporters or police can interview him. The storm had rolled in far faster than anyone had expected. Sheets of rain pounded the highway, reducing visibility to only a few meters. Wind-bent roadside trees and headlights reflected off the soaked asphalt like scattered stars. Marion tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his aging pickup truck, its engine humming steadily despite its years of faithful service. He was exhausted. The emergency repair he'd just completed for a stranded family had taken nearly 4 hours. Their minivan had broken down more than 30 miles from the nearest town, and Marion couldn't bring himself to leave them stranded in the worsening weather. By the time he finished replacing the damaged alternator, darkness had already begun settling over the countryside. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. Still, as always, helping someone had mattered more than keeping to his own schedule. A sudden line of glowing brake lights stretched endlessly ahead. Marion eased his truck to a stop. Drivers climbed from their vehicles, staring toward a section of highway where twisted metal glistened beneath flashing hazard lights. He stepped out. "What happened?" he asked a frightened motorist. "A tanker nearly jackknifed," the man replied, pointing ahead. "That black SUV swerved to avoid it and crashed through the guardrail." Another voice shouted, "Stay back, it's leaking fuel." Marion looked beyond the crowd. The luxury SUV rested at an angle against the broken barrier, its front end crushed. Smoke drifted from beneath the bonnet while fuel trickled across the wet road. Inside the driver's seat, he caught sight of movement. A woman, barely conscious. Someone nearby pulled out a phone. "The fire department's coming." "They're at least 15 minutes away," another person answered nervously. A spark crackled beneath the vehicle. Several people instinctively stepped backwards. Nobody moved closer. Marion didn't hesitate. He sprinted to his pickup truck, threw open the rear door, grabbed the fire extinguisher he always carried for workshop emergencies, and raced back through the rain. "Sir, don't," someone shouted. "It'll explode." Marion ignored them. The driver's door had been crushed shut. He circled to the opposite side. The side window was fractured, but still intact. Using the extinguisher, he struck the glass repeatedly until it shattered. Carefully shielding the unconscious woman from the remaining shards, he reached inside. Her pulse was weak. She wasn't responding. "Come on," he muttered. "Stay with me." The steering wheel had trapped part of her clothing. Working quickly, Marion freed the fabric before wrapping one arm around her shoulders. The smell of petrol grew stronger. Smoke thickened. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he slowly pulled her through the broken window. The slippery road made every step difficult, but he refused to let go. Just as he dragged her several meters away from the wreckage, a deafening explosion erupted behind them. A massive fireball shot into the stormy sky. The heat forced everyone to shield their faces. Several bystanders gasped in disbelief. If he'd waited another 5 seconds, someone whispered. Marion laid the unconscious woman gently on the grass beyond the shoulder of the road. He checked her breathing again. Still alive. Relief washed over him. Within minutes, ambulances, firefighters, and police officers arrived. Paramedics rushed to the woman, stabilizing her before placing her carefully onto a stretcher. One officer approached Marion. "Sir, are you the one who rescued her?" Marion glanced at the growing crowd, and the phones pointed in his direction. "I'm just glad she's alive," he replied quietly. As the emergency crews focused on the accident scene, Marion slipped back to his pickup unnoticed. He climbed inside, started the engine, and drove away into the rain, never asking the woman's name, and never imagining that a single act of kindness had just changed both of their lives forever. Sophia Bennett slowly opened her eyes to the rhythmic beeping of hospital monitors. Everything around her appeared blurred. White ceilings, soft lights. The faint scent of antiseptic filled the room. She blinked several times before attempting to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through her shoulder. "Easy, Miss Bennett." A doctor gently rested a hand on her arm. "You've been through a serious accident." Fragments of memory drifted back. The highway. The blinding headlights. The tanker swerving. The violent impact. Then, a face. A man with rainwater running down his forehead, desperately calling for her to stay awake. She frowned. "The man," she whispered weakly. "What man?" "The one who pulled me out." The doctor smiled. "If you're talking about your rescuer, you were incredibly fortunate. According to emergency responders, you were removed from the vehicle only moments before it exploded." Sophia closed her eyes. Whoever he was had risked his own life for a complete stranger. That wasn't something she could simply forget. Hours later, the room became noticeably busier. Her executive assistant, Olivia Grant, entered first, followed by the company's legal advisor, head of security, and 2 members of Bennett Technologies' executive board. Their expressions mixed concern with relief. "Sophia," Olivia sighed, tears welling in her eyes. "You scared us." "I'm all right," Sophia replied softly. The legal advisor cleared his throat. "The media already knows about the accident." "How?" "A passing driver recorded the rescue before emergency services arrived." Olivia placed a tablet on the hospital bed. The video had already spread across social media. It showed the burning SUV, the terrified crowd, then a man in dark mechanic's overalls sprinting toward the vehicle carrying a fire extinguisher. Several people in the video shouted at him to stop. He ignored every warning. Sophia watched as he smashed the window, pulled her free, carried her away. Seconds later, the SUV exploded. The room fell silent. One board member finally spoke. "We've identified the hospital, but not the rescuer." Sophia looked up. "Find him." "Of course," Olivia replied. "I don't want a press conference." The room exchanged confused looks. "I don't want cameras. I don't want publicity. I simply want to thank the man who saved my life." Meanwhile, nearly 40 miles away, Marion Temple unlocked the faded roller door of Temple Auto Repairs just after sunrise. The workshop looked exactly as it had every morning for years. The concrete floor was stained with engine oil. Tool cabinets showed their age. The faded sign above the entrance leaned slightly to one side after years of harsh weather. Business had been slow for months. His faithful assistant, Ben Morris, was already sweeping the workshop floor. "You look terrible," Ben joked. "You should see the other guy," Marion replied with a tired grin. Ben laughed. "Long night." "You could say that." Marion never mentioned the rescue. To him, it wasn't something worth talking about. Someone had needed help. He had helped. That was the end of it. His first customer arrived before 8. An elderly school teacher whose 20-year-old hatchback had developed a noisy gearbox. Marion charged only for the replacement parts. Ben shook his head after the woman drove away. You'll never become rich charging people like that. Marion smiled while wiping grease from his hands. She's living on a pension. I know. So does she. Ben chuckled. You're impossible. Before Marion could answer, his mobile phone buzzed. The screen displayed another reminder. Garage rent overdue. Final notice. His smile faded. He quietly slipped the phone back into his pocket. The landlord had already warned him twice. If he couldn't pay within 2 weeks, Temple Auto Repairs would be closed. That evening, Marion drove across town to visit his younger sister, Lily, at her small student apartment. She tried to hide her worries, but he immediately noticed unopened university letters stacked on the kitchen table. He picked one up. Past due tuition balance. Lily sighed. I was going to tell you. You don't have to. I'll figure something out. No, Marion said gently. We'll figure it out. She looked at him sadly. You already work 12 hours a day. I'll work 14 if I have to. Lily smiled weakly. You always say that. Because it's true. Back at Bennett Technologies headquarters the following morning, Sophia stood before a large digital display inside the security operations room. Her head of security replayed traffic camera footage collected from every motorway camera surrounding the accident. Most clips showed nothing useful. Then one frame caught everyone's attention. The rescuer climbed into an old pickup truck. For less than 3 seconds, the camera captured the vehicle's registration plate before it disappeared into the rain. The head of security smiled. I think we just found our first real lead. Sophia stared at the screen. For the first time since waking up, hope replaced uncertainty. Soon, she would finally meet the man who had saved her life, completely unaware that he wanted nothing from her except the comfort of knowing she had survived. 3 days later, the security team at Bennett Technologies confirmed what the motorway camera had only hinted at. The registration number belonged to an aging pickup truck registered to Marion Temple, owner of Temple Auto Repairs, a small independent garage on the outskirts of the city. Sophia stared quietly at the report lying on the conference table. There was no long list of properties, no expensive investments, no hidden business empire. Just a modest workshop, a pickup truck nearly 15 years old, and a record that described him as someone who had never once been investigated for fraud, tax evasion, or dishonest business practices. Her head of security looked up. We've also spoken with a few people in his neighborhood. And they all describe him the same way. How? Honest. Another file was opened. He often repairs vehicles for elderly customers without charging labor. Sometimes he lets people pay in installments when they can't afford repairs. One executive frowned. That isn't exactly good business. Sophia smiled faintly. No. It's good character. The room fell silent. One board member finally spoke. Should we arrange a formal meeting? We can invite him here, organize a press event, present him with a reward. No. Sophia interrupted before he could finish. I don't want his first visit to be surrounded by cameras. What do you want to do? I'll go to him. The executives exchanged surprised glances. Alone? Not entirely, Sophia replied. Olivia can come with me, but no company vehicles, no media, and no security detail following us into his workshop. That afternoon, Sophia changed into simple blue jeans, a light blouse, trainers, and a baseball cap. She removed the jewelry she normally wore and tied her hair into a low ponytail. Even Olivia almost failed to recognize her. I haven't seen you dressed like this in years, Olivia admitted. Sophia smiled. That's the point. An ordinary rental car carried them across town instead of one of Bennett Technologies' chauffeur-driven vehicles. When they finally pulled into Temple Auto Repairs, Sophia noticed how small it really was. The faded sign above the entrance had seen better days. The paint on the building was beginning to peel. Inside, engines, toolboxes, and spare parts filled every available corner. Yet despite its age, everything was neatly organized. Every tool hung in its proper place. The floor had been swept clean. Customers chatted comfortably while waiting for their cars. It felt welcoming. Sophia stepped inside. Marion was underneath a delivery van, tightening the final bolt on its suspension. Ben spotted the visitors first. "Morning. You ladies need some help." Sophia nodded politely. "I think my car needs servicing." Ben glanced toward the rental car. "Looks fairly new." "It belonged to my father." Marion rolled out from beneath the van on a mechanic's creeper and stood to his feet, wiping grease from his hands with a clean cloth. "I'm Marion." His voice stopped Sophia's heart for a moment. She recognized it instantly. The same calm voice she had heard through the haze of unconsciousness on the rain-soaked highway. "Stay with me." She had replayed those words countless times in her mind. Now the man standing before her had no idea who she was. He simply smiled politely. "What seems to be the problem with the car?" Sophia almost forgot to answer. "It makes a strange noise sometimes." "Only while driving." "Mostly." "When did it start?" She glanced helplessly at Olivia. Olivia quickly improvised. "A few weeks ago." Marion nodded. "I'll take a look." Within minutes, he had the vehicle on the lift. He inspected the tires, checked the suspension, tested the brakes. Then he walked back carrying a small worn rubber bushing. "This is your problem." Sophia looked at the tiny part. "Is it serious?" "Not at all." "How much?" Marion smiled. "The part costs almost nothing." 20 minutes later, the repair was finished. Sophia expected an invoice running into hundreds. Instead, Marion handed her a receipt. The amount barely covered the replacement part. She stared at it. "Are you sure this is correct?" He laughed softly. "I didn't do very much." Sophia reached into her handbag and quietly removed an envelope containing several £1,000s. "I'd like you to have this." Marion looked confused. "For changing a rubber bushing." "It's a thank you." He gently pushed the envelope back towards her. "I'm sorry. I can't accept that. You don't even know why I'm offering it." "I don't need to." Sophia looked directly into his eyes. "What if someone wanted to thank you for something much bigger?" Marion smiled warmly. "If they're alive and doing well." He paused before adding the exact words that would remain with Sophia forever. "Seeing you alive is enough payment." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. He still didn't recognize her. He wasn't saying those words because he expected anything in return. He genuinely meant them. For the first time in many years, Sophia met someone completely untouched by wealth, status, or influence. As Olivia quietly led her outside before emotion overwhelmed her, Sophia glanced back through the workshop window. Marion had already returned to work beneath another customer's vehicle, completely unaware that the woman whose life he had saved had finally found him, and that her admiration for his kindness had just become something far deeper. Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Marion Temple. For days after visiting Temple Auto Repairs, his words echoed in her mind. "Seeing you alive is enough payment." She had spent years surrounded by people who measured everything in money, influence, or personal gain. Investors negotiated friendships. Competitors disguised ambition as loyalty. Even acts of generosity often came with hidden expectations. Yet Marion had risked his life for someone he believed was an ordinary stranger. Then, when offered enough money to solve many of his financial problems, he had politely refused without asking a single question. The more Sophia thought about it, the more she realized she wanted to know the man behind that extraordinary kindness. A week later, she returned to Temple Auto Repairs. This time, she drove the same rental car. Ben recognized her immediately. "Back already," he joked. Sophia smiled. It started making another strange noise. Ben laughed. "Funny, cars usually wait longer than a week." Before she could answer, Marion walked out from inside the workshop. "Good morning." "Morning." He smiled politely. "Let's have another look." After inspecting the vehicle, Marion scratched the back of his head. "I'm afraid I have some bad news." Sophia looked concerned. "What is it?" He grinned. "Nothing's wrong with it." She couldn't help laughing. "So my car is perfectly fine." "It is." She hesitated for a second before admitting, "Maybe I'm just being overly cautious." "There's nothing wrong with that," Marion replied. "A well-maintained car keeps people safe." Sophia nodded. "I'll remember that." Instead of leaving immediately, she noticed an elderly man struggling to carry several heavy boxes from the boot of his old estate car. Without hesitation, Marion walked over and lifted every box himself. "You should have called me," he told the man. "I didn't want to bother you." "You never bother me." Sophia watched quietly as Marion carried the boxes inside, before returning with a smile, as though helping people were simply part of his daily routine. No cameras. No audience. Just kindness. Over the following weeks, Sophia found one reason after another to visit the workshop. Sometimes she asked Marion to explain simple maintenance checks. Another time, she admitted, she had never changed a tire herself. Marion looked genuinely surprised. "You've never done it." She shook her head. "My father always had someone else handle these things." "Well," Marion said with a smile, "today you'll learn." He rolled an old spare wheel across the workshop floor. Ben folded his arms and watched with amusement. "This should be interesting." Marion patiently showed Sophia where to position the jack. "No." He smiled gently. "Not there. The car could slip." She laughed. "I'm clearly hopeless." "Not hopeless. Just learning." With patient guidance, she loosened the wheel nuts, raised the vehicle, and replaced the tire herself. When she finally tightened the last nut, Marion stepped back and applauded. "There. You've officially earned the title of emergency roadside expert." Sophia burst into laughter. "I think that's a bit generous." "Maybe. But now you know you can do it." She looked at her grease-covered hands. "I never imagined I'd enjoy getting this dirty." Marion handed her a clean cloth. First time for everything. The days slowly turned into weeks. Their conversations stretched beyond cars. Marion spoke about growing up with his late father, who had taught him that a person's reputation was worth more than money. "He used to tell me," Marion said one afternoon while replacing brake pads, "people may forget what you charged them, but they'll never forget how you treated them." Sophia listened carefully. "My father used to say something similar." "What did he say?" "Success means very little if you lose yourself trying to achieve it." Marion smiled. "Sounds like a wise man." He was. For the first time since her father's death several years earlier, Sophia spoke about him without feeling overwhelmed by grief. One Saturday afternoon, Marion closed the workshop earlier than usual. "Our neighborhood's having a community football match," he explained. "You should come." Sophia hesitated. "I don't think I'd fit in." "You'll fit in just fine." She accepted. The small community field buzzed with laughter. Children chased footballs across the grass. Neighbors shared homemade food. Older residents sat beneath colorful canopies, exchanging stories. Nobody recognized Sophia Bennett, the billionaire CEO whose face occasionally appeared in business magazines. To them, she was simply Sophia, Marion's new friend. She helped serve food to elderly residents, laughed as children convinced her to join a penalty shootout, and even lost spectacularly in a sack race that left everyone, including Marion, laughing until tears filled their eyes. Watching him laugh so freely made something inside Sophia change. Around Marion, she wasn't a billionaire carrying the weight of thousands of employees and endless corporate decisions. She was simply herself. As the sun began to set, they sat quietly on a wooden bench overlooking the field. "You know," Sophia said softly, "I haven't had a day like this in years." Marion looked at the families packing up around them. Sometimes the smallest moments become the biggest memories. Sophia turned to look at him. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. There was no awkwardness. Only a peaceful silence shared between two people from completely different worlds, slowly discovering that the distance between those worlds wasn't as great as either had once believed. Neither mentioned love. Neither spoke about feelings. But somewhere between shared laughter, grease-stained hands, and ordinary afternoons, a genuine friendship had quietly begun to blossom into something neither of them yet fully understood. The peaceful routine Sophia had come to treasure couldn't last forever. By Monday morning, she was back on the top floor of Bennett Technologies headquarters, surrounded by glass walls, digital displays, and boardroom tables where every decision carried the weight of billions of pounds. Waiting for her inside the executive conference room were the company's directors, senior executives, and major investors. The atmosphere felt noticeably different. No one asked how she was recovering from the accident. Instead, the conversation turned almost immediately to business. The chairman folded his hands together. "Our international expansion is entering its final stage." Sophia nodded. "I've reviewed the projections. There's one remaining concern." She looked around the room. "What concern?" One of the senior investors spoke carefully. "Market confidence." Another director continued. "Several overseas partners believe the company needs stronger long-term leadership stability before they commit fully." Sophia already knew where the conversation was heading. "What are you suggesting?" The chairman exchanged glances with several board members. "We believe it's time to make your relationship with Adrian Brooks official." The room fell silent. Sophia's expression hardened. "I've never agreed to that." "No," the chairman admitted, "but the market has always expected it." Adrian Brooks sat quietly near the end of the table. Immaculately dressed, confident and polished, he carried himself like a man already certain of his future. His father owned one of the largest investment groups supporting Bennett Technologies. For years, rumors had linked Adrian and Sophia together, though Sophia had never encouraged them. She respected him professionally. Nothing more. Adrian finally spoke. "It doesn't have to be rushed." Sophia met his eyes. "It isn't happening." Several directors shifted uncomfortably. One investor sighed. "Sophia, this isn't only about personal feelings. It concerns shareholder confidence." She stood from her chair. "My personal life isn't a business strategy." Without waiting for another response, she walked out of the boardroom. Behind the closed doors, uneasy silence settled over the executives. Adrian remained seated. His calm expression never changed. But inside, irritation simmered. For years, he had believed marrying Sophia was simply a matter of time. Now she was refusing him completely. And he wanted to know why. Later that afternoon, Adrian instructed his private investigator to begin looking into Sophia's recent activities. "I want to know everywhere she's been since the accident." Within days, photographs arrived. Several showed Sophia's rental car, parked outside Temple Auto Repairs. Others captured Marion and Sophia talking outside the workshop. One photograph showed them laughing together while changing a tire. Another showed them sitting on a wooden bench after the community football match. Adrian studied every image. "Who's he?" The investigator placed another file on the desk. Marion Temple. A mechanic. He owns a small independent garage. No criminal record. No financial links to Ms. Bennett. No political connections. Adrian narrowed his eyes. So how did he get close to her? The investigator hesitated. We believe he rescued her during the highway accident. Adrian leaned back slowly. Everything suddenly made sense. A dangerous idea began forming in his mind. If people believed he rescued her for money, the investigator looked uncertain. But there's no evidence of that. There doesn't need to be. Over the next several days, anonymous accounts began posting carefully worded rumors across social media. Did the mechanic know who she was? Funny how he suddenly became close to the billionaire. Looks like the rescue was the smartest investment he ever made. The accusations spread quickly. Online commentators filled the gaps with speculation. Within a week, local newspapers picked up the rumors without confirming the facts. Television talk shows debated whether Marion's kindness had been genuine or calculated. Temple Auto Repairs felt the effects almost immediately. Customers canceled appointments. Some simply stopped coming altogether. One afternoon, Ben stared at the nearly empty workshop. I've never seen it this quiet. Marion tightened a bolt on a customer's pickup without looking up. It'll pass. Ben wasn't convinced. People are saying horrible things. I know. They think you planned everything. Marion smiled sadly. Truth doesn't change because rumors become popular. Ben shook his head. You should tell everyone what really happened. And say what? That I didn't know who she was. Some people would believe you. Others wouldn't. Ben sighed. So you're just going to stay silent? Marion set down his wrench. My father taught me something. What? If you spend your life chasing every lie people tell about you. He smiled gently. You'll never have time to live honestly. Across town, Sophia watched the growing wave of false stories with disbelief. Every headline hurt. Every rumor insulted the man who had saved her life, without expecting anything in return. She immediately ordered her communications department to prepare a public response. Before the statement could be released, however, another message reached her. Adrian wanted the rumors left alone. They'll disappear on their own, he insisted during a private meeting. Sophia stared at him. You know they're lies. They're only speculation. No. They're destroying an innocent man's reputation. Adrian shrugged. Perhaps he shouldn't have become so close to you. Sophia looked at him in stunned silence. For the first time, she saw not the polished executive everyone admired, but the ambition hidden beneath his charm. As she walked away from the meeting, one thing became painfully clear. The greatest danger to Marion was no longer public gossip. It was someone willing to manipulate the truth for personal gain. And Sophia silently promised herself that no matter the cost, she would protect the man who had once risked everything to save her life. The weeks leading up to Bennett Technologies' annual shareholders' conference became some of the most difficult Marion Temple had ever experienced. Temple Auto Repairs, once filled with the sounds of engines, friendly conversations, and loyal customers, had grown painfully quiet. Every canceled appointment chipped away at the garage's already fragile finances. His landlord had extended the payment deadline only once. Lily's university tuition remained unpaid. Even so, Marion refused to complain. Each morning, he unlocked the workshop, swept the floor, arranged his tools, and greeted every customer who still chose to trust him with the same warmth he always had. Ben admired his determination. I don't know how you stay so calm, he admitted one afternoon. Marion smiled as he tightened the final bolt on a customer's suspension. Because I know who I am. Doesn't it bother you? Of course it does. Then why don't you fight back? Marion wiped his hands with a clean cloth before answering. If people only believe I'm a good man after I defend myself. He looked around the workshop. Then they never really believed it in the first place. Across the city, Sophia was preparing for the company's biggest event of the year. Hundreds of shareholders, international investors, journalists, and business leaders would attend. The annual conference was traditionally used to announce major partnerships and future expansion plans. This year, however, Sophia had something entirely different planned. She spent hours reviewing the original emergency footage with her legal team. Every frame was examined, every timestamp verified. The passing motorist who had recorded the rescue willingly provided the original unedited video. Traffic camera recordings confirmed the exact sequence of events. Police reports established that Marion had never spoken to anyone about the woman's identity before leaving the scene. Every piece of evidence pointed to one undeniable truth. Marion Temple had acted out of pure selflessness. The morning of the conference finally arrived. The grand auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Television cameras lined the rear of the hall. Business reporters whispered about rumors of an engagement announcement between Sophia Bennett and Adrian Brooks. Adrian himself looked remarkably confident as he greeted investors near the front row. He believed everything was unfolding exactly as expected. The conference began with presentations outlining Bennett Technologies' record-breaking growth, international expansion, and future innovations. When the formal reports ended, the chairman stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude today's meeting, Mr. Adrian Brooks wishes to address the shareholders. Polite applause filled the room. Adrian approached the podium with perfect composure. He thanked investors for their continued confidence before gradually steering the conversation towards Sophia. As many of you know, he began, recent weeks have brought unnecessary distractions surrounding someone who has become unusually close to our CEO. Several journalists immediately began taking notes. Adrian continued, I believe it is important that those entrusted with leading a company of this magnitude exercise greater judgment regarding the individuals they allow into their personal lives. Photographs of Marion appeared on the large presentation screen. Murmurs spread through the audience. Adrian looked directly towards Sophia. I sincerely hope Ms. Bennett will recognize that some people are motivated not by kindness. He paused dramatically, but by opportunity. Before another word could leave his mouth, Sophia rose from her seat. That's enough. The auditorium fell silent. She calmly walked onto the stage. Please remove those photographs. The screen went blank. Sophia turned towards the audience. I have remained silent for far too long. She nodded to the audiovisual technician. I'd like everyone here to watch something. The enormous screen came to life. The original, unedited rescue footage began playing. There was no dramatic music, no editing, no narration, only reality. The audience watched as the fuel tanker lost control. The SUV crashed through the guardrail. Drivers ran away from the leaking vehicle. Then Marion appeared. He sprinted towards danger while everyone else retreated. The recording clearly showed him smashing the window, freeing Sophia from the wreckage, and carrying her to safety. Most importantly, the timestamp revealed something impossible to dispute. Marion left the scene before emergency responders even identified the victim. He had no way of knowing she was Sophia Bennett. When the footage ended, absolute silence filled the auditorium. Then someone began clapping. Another person joined. Within seconds, the entire hall rose to its feet in a thunderous standing ovation. Several journalists lowered their cameras, visibly moved by what they had witnessed. Sophia looked towards Adrian. You accused an innocent man because his character threatened your ambition. Adrian tried to speak. Sophia, No. She interrupted calmly. The investigation didn't stop with those rumors. She nodded again. The company's legal advisor walked onto the stage, carrying several folders. During our investigation, Sophia continued, independent auditors uncovered evidence of unethical business practices involving confidential investor communications and attempts to manipulate company decisions. Gasps echoed through the room. The chairman accepted the investigation report before addressing the board. After a brief private consultation, he returned to the microphone. Effective immediately, Adrian Brooks is removed from all executive responsibilities, pending further legal review. Security officers quietly approached Adrian. For the first time, the confident executive looked completely defeated. He left the auditorium without another word. Later that afternoon, while reporters celebrated Marion as a genuine hero, he remained at his workshop, completely unaware of what had happened. The familiar sound of tires stopping outside caught his attention. He stepped outside. Sophia climbed from her car. This time there was no disguise. No baseball cap. No pretense. She walked towards him with tears in her eyes. I should have protected you sooner. Marion gently shook his head. You don't owe me an apology. I do. She smiled through her tears. You saved my life. And somehow, you still found yourself paying the price. Marion looked at her kindly. I'd do it again. Those simple words broke the last of Sophia's emotional restraint. Weeks later, Marion received an invitation to a charity program where Bennett Technologies was helping rebuild vocational schools for disadvantaged young people. Instead of arriving as a guest of honor, he quietly picked up a toolbox and joined the volunteers repairing classrooms, generators, and workshop equipment. Sophia watched him for hours. Even now, with the whole country praising him, nothing about him had changed. At sunset, they stood together outside the newly completed workshop. Marion looked at Sophia with a gentle smile. The woman I fell for isn't the billionaire on magazine covers. She held her breath. It's the woman who laughed while learning how to change a tire. Tears filled Sophia's eyes once more. And I fell in love with the mechanic who treated me like an ordinary person long before he knew my name. Months later, family, neighbors, employees, and the emergency responders who had witnessed the highway rescue gathered beneath a beautiful open sky as Marion and Sophia exchanged their wedding vows. Rather than live separate lives, they combined their strengths. Marion transformed his once struggling garage into a nationwide vocational training network that taught disadvantaged young people valuable mechanical skills and honest workmanship. Sophia proudly funded scholarships, but insisted every program be guided by Marion's principles of integrity, compassion, and hard work. Years later, during an interview celebrating the success of their foundation, a journalist asked Sophia where the greatest investment of her life had been made. She smiled at Marion before answering. Not in technology. She gently took his hand. On a rainy highway, when one mechanic chose a stranger's life over his own safety. The camera slowly pulled away from the once struggling roadside garage, now transformed into a thriving training academy. Above its entrance hung a simple wooden sign that perfectly captured the journey that had changed 2 lives forever. Kindness can change a life. Hand in hand, Marion and Sophia walked through the workshop surrounded by smiling apprentices, proving that one selfless act of courage on an ordinary day had become the beginning of a forever love story. Thank you for watching this heartwarming love story. If Marion and Sophia's journey touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe for more emotional stories filled with love, hope, kindness, and unforgettable twists. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next inspiring story. See you in the next video.